The beam of my headlamp cut through darkness that felt almost solid. Ahead of me, the narrow limestone passage twisted downward, its walls slick with moisture and age. I'd spent 3 years searching for this entrance, the fabled doorway to Shelter Town, the Cold War bunker community that had vanished from official records back in 1957. "How much farther, Edison?" Sarah's voice echoed from behind me, her tone carrying the practiced patience of someone who'd followed me into too many holes underground. "Can't be far now," I replied, studying the natural contours of the rock. The geological survey from 1962 mentioned a vertical drop about half a mile in from this access point. Behind Sarah, Ben's headlamp bobbed as he adjusted his equipment. "Man, if this turns out to be another wild goose chase, you're buying the beers for a month." I smiled despite the tension building in my shoulders. As the county's youngest archivist, my weekdays were spent cataloging mundane town records, but weekends belonged to the unexplored, and this could be the find of a lifetime. "The Watterson journals were specific," I said, ducking beneath a low-hanging rock formation. The community was built inside a massive cavern system, government-funded but off the books. A complete underground town designed to test long-term subterranean living for the nuclear age. Sarah, ever the pragmatic geologist, sighed. "And supposedly abandoned after 18 months for undisclosed reasons. Edison, even if this place exists, it's probably flooded or collapsed by now." I didn't bother arguing. Sarah knew the stories as well as I did. The rumors of mass hysteria, of the project being suddenly shut down, of sealed entrances and reports full of blacked-out text. But unlike me, she hadn't spent nights poring over fragmented documents, mapping reference points, cross-referencing local legends with weird geological findings. The passage suddenly narrowed, forcing us into a crawl. My breathing sounded unnaturally loud in my ears as the weight of the mountain pressed down. Claustrophobia wasn't usually my problem, but there was something about this particular squeeze that felt wrong, like the mountain itself was trying to keep us out. "Hold up!" Ben called from behind, his voice strained. "I'm catching a breeze. There's definitely a larger space ahead." Minutes later, we reached it, a vertical shaft, maybe 15 feet across, disappearing into blackness both above and below. Our headlamps couldn't reach the bottom. "This is it," I whispered, adrenaline making my hands shake as I prepped our rappelling gear. "The main access shaft. According to the journals, the community should be about 80 feet down." The descent was silent except for the soft scrape of rope against rock. When my feet touched solid ground, I found myself in a small antechamber. A man-made concrete tunnel stretched ahead. "Holy shit," Ben breathed as he and Sarah joined me. "You actually found it?" We followed the tunnel in reverent silence until it abruptly ended. Before us lay a cavern of impossible size, our headlamps barely reaching the distant ceiling. But what stopped us dead wasn't the size, it was what filled it. A street, a perfectly preserved suburban street with neat houses lining both sides, pristine lawns, now dusty but intact, old-fashioned cars parked in driveways, street lamps at regular intervals, their bulbs dark but whole. And there, at the entrance to this underground neighborhood, a wooden sign, its paint still bright against the absolute darkness. "Welcome to Haven," I read aloud, my voice barely a whisper. "The future is safe here." The silence that followed was total. No dripping water, no echo, nothing. Just 3 beams of light shining on a town frozen in time, waiting for us to take our first steps inside. I stood frozen at the entrance to Haven, our headlamps carving 3 harsh pools of light that barely pushed back the darkness. The sign promising that the future is safe here now felt strangely threatening, hanging over a street forgotten by time. Sarah broke our trance first, stepping onto the unnervingly perfect asphalt. Her footsteps echoed with unnatural clarity in the enormous cave. "This preservation shouldn't be possible," she whispered, her voice traveling farther than it had any right to. "No collapse, no rot. Nothing." Ben swung his light across the closest house, a pristine suburban ranch with a white picket fence and a manicured lawn inexplicably surviving decades without sun or rain. "It's like they walked away yesterday," he murmured, shifting his pack nervously. "But every record of this place stops dead in 1957. I forced myself forward, my mind automatically noting every detail. This was the discovery of a lifetime. Proof Sheltertown wasn't just local ghost stories. The street stretched before us, 5 houses on either side, with a larger building that looked like a general store at the center. "Let's start with the store," I suggested, pointing towards it. "We might learn something about the people who lived here." The glass front door swung open smoothly, no rust on its hinges. Inside, shelves stood stocked dusty cans and household supplies, everything coated in a layer of fine dust yet perfectly preserved. Stale but breathable air filled our lungs, carrying a faint metallic taste. "Edison, see this?" Sarah called out from behind the counter. She stood by an old soda fountain, her headlamp beam fixed on the wall behind it. Where a big mirror should have hung, only an empty wooden frame remained. Beneath it, shards of glass had been gathered into a neat, careful pile. "That is strange," I murmured, crouching to examine the pile without touching it. "Why break it only to clean it up so meticulously?" "Maybe there was an accident," Ben suggested, but his tone lacked conviction. We searched further, moving to the first house on the street. The front door was unlocked. Inside, we found a perfect slice of 1950s life: flower-patterned chairs, a bulky black and white television, family pictures watching from the mantel. But something was off with the windows. I went to one and scraped my finger along the glass. "They're painted over," I said, picking at the thick black coating. "From the inside, every single one." "Saw the same in the bathroom," Ben called from down the hall. "And guys, the mirror's been smashed too, completely." We found the same deliberate destruction everywhere. Any reflective surface either wrecked or hidden. Chrome fixtures looked roughed up with steel wool. Picture frames held photos without their glass protectors. In the master bedroom, tucked beneath the mattress, I found a leather-bound book, a diary. "Listen," I said, turning the yellowed pages. "March 15th, 1957. Dr. Simmons claims it's just the isolation wearing us down, but I know better. See it in the reflections. They shift wrong, just slow at first. A blink that lags, a smile that stays too long." I flipped to another page. April 2nd, more folks reporting the sickness. The council says it's mass hysteria from being buried alive too long. Planning more movies, community fun, anything to divert us. But I've seen what moves inside the mirrors. It watches. "That's enough," Sarah said sharply. Her face looked ghostly pale in the harsh beam. "Something monstrous happened here." "It screams psychological breakdown," I explained, though coldness settled low in my gut. "Total sensory deprivation, cut off from daylight, weather, the real world, breeds hallucinations, makes people paranoid." "But why wreck every reflective surface?" Ben asked, sweeping his light around the gloom. "Why be so thorough?" "Mass hysteria breeds strange rituals," I answered, slipping the diary into my pack. "One breaks a mirror, fear makes others copy. Simple herd psychology." Sarah frowned. "I don't buy it, Edison." This feels calculated, planned. The next house showed the same pattern: blacked-out windows, shattered mirrors, scoured metal. In the kitchen, I noticed deep gouges scratched deliberately into the linoleum floor, where it might have held even a faint glimmer. Back on the silent street, our lights feeble against the pressing darkness, my logical explanations felt flimsy. The methodical destruction whispered a different story. And beneath it all crawled that persistent feeling. We weren't alone in Haven. Something lurking in the depths watched, waiting to catch its own reflection flickering in our eyes. We agreed to check one last house before calling it a day. Despite my scientific talk about mass hysteria or bad chemicals in the water, finding every single reflective surface smashed or ruined had spooked us all. Sarah walked close beside me now, her earlier excitement gone, replaced by tight nerves. "Maybe we should head back," Ben suggested, his voice too loud in the heavy silence. "We've got enough notes for today." "Just one more," I insisted, pointing to a simple ranch-style house with the number 17 painted on the mailbox. "Then we'll head back and make a plan." The front door opened easily with a gentle push, swinging inward without a sound. Our headlamp beams cut sharp paths through the darkness, lighting up a living room frozen in time. Family photos lined the walls. The glass in every single frame had been purposely shattered, leaving only broken pieces of smiles. Sarah moved toward the kitchen while Ben looked over the living room. I went down a narrow hallway toward a bathroom. "Guys," Sarah called out, her voice strained. "It wasn't just mirrors. Come see this." I joined her in the kitchen. She pointed at a 1950s chrome toaster. Its once shiny surface had been deliberately scratched all over. It looked like someone attacked it with steel wool in a frenzy. "And the faucets," she continued, nodding toward the sink. "Even the polished steel handles, someone deliberately scratched them up." Ben appeared in the doorway. "Same in there. The television screen smashed to bits, and the glass face was ripped clean off a grandfather clock." I nodded, forcing myself to stay calm. "Matches what we found elsewhere. They were wiping out everything that could show a reflection, systematically." "Why would anyone do this?" Sarah whispered. "Mass psychosis," I said automatically, repeating my earlier theory. "Too much isolation. Maybe poison in their water." There are real cases where whole towns shared the same crazy delusion. But even as I said it, the words felt flimsy. The destruction felt too deliberate, too desperately thorough. It spoke of real, raw terror, not just a broken mind. "Let's check the bathroom," I suggested, needing to move, to keep busy instead of letting the crawling unease take hold. The bathroom was small but perfectly clean, like everything else in Haven. The mirror above the sink was shattered, the pieces swept neatly into a pile in the corner. The chrome fixtures had been brutally scoured like those in the kitchen, scraped until nothing could reflect. Even the toilet bowl held no water. "They emptied it," I noted, kneeling beside the dry toilet. "Anything that could hold even a faint reflection. They destroyed it." "Eddie?" Sarah said softly, using my college nickname for the first time in forever. "I don't like this place. Something feels deeply wrong." "It's just the dark and the isolation," I said, forcing confidence into my voice. "Look, these people were trapped down here. They clearly had some kind of shared mental breakdown. It's a tragic piece of history, but nothing supernatural. There's nothing to fear down here but fear itself." To prove my point, I grabbed one of the larger mirror shards from the corner pile. "See? It's just broken glass." I held it up to the light from my headlamp. For a second, I saw what I expected. My own face, slightly warped by the jagged edge. Then it changed. The reflection shifted just slightly at first, but clearly. It was still my face, but the expression wasn't me. While I stared with neutral, focused interest, the reflection's lips twisted. They curled up into a huge, unnatural grin, stretching too far across its cheeks. And the eyes, good God, the eyes, they went dark. Pupil, iris, the white part, everything melted into pure, bottomless black pits. It was my face, wearing a nightmare mask. It wasn't me looking back. I dropped the shard with a sharp gasp. It clattered sharply against the tile floor, the noise horribly loud in the small space. "What's wrong?" Ben asked, stepping closer. "Nothing," I lied, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Just nicked my finger." I made a show of examining my fingertip, though it was unmarked. Sarah frowned. "Are you sure? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I insisted, standing up too fast. "Just the light playing tricks on the broken glass." That's when I heard it. Faint, but definite. A delicate, rhythmic tapping, like a fingernail gently rapping against glass. I turned, scanning the bathroom, but the sound seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. "Hear what?" Ben asked, looking concerned. I strained my ears. The tapping continued, soft but constant. Tap, tap, tap. Like something trying to get my attention. Something inside the glass. "Nothing," I said after a moment. "Just water dripping somewhere, maybe." But there was no water in Haven. Anything that could reflect had been meticulously dried or obliterated. And as we moved back toward the living room, the tapping followed us, always just on the edge of hearing. I carefully avoided looking at the remaining glass fragments as we left. I couldn't shake the chilling thought that something was watching us from within those broken shards. Something wearing my face, looking out. Something that wasn't me at all. The tapping followed us out of the house, a soft but persistent sound like fingernails on glass. At first, I thought it was coming from one specific place, but as we stood on the empty street of Haven, I realized with growing horror that it surrounded us. Every broken window, every cracked storefront, every single shard of glass seemed to emit that same rhythmic sound. Tap, tap, tap. "Do you hear that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah looked at me, her headlamp carving harsh shadows across her face. "Hear what?" "That tapping sound, it's everywhere." Ben shifted uneasily beside me. "I don't hear anything, Ed, but something feels really wrong here." He was fidgeting with his camera, nervously wiping the lens over and over with his sleeve. "I keep seeing something in the viewfinder. When I look at myself in the preview screen, it's not right." "What do you mean, not right?" Sarah demanded, her scientific skepticism giving way to obvious fear. Ben shook his head. "I don't know. It's me, but it's not me. The timing feels off or something." Sarah took a step back from both of us. "That's it. We need to leave. Right now. This place is messing with our minds." I wanted to agree with her, but something pulled me toward house number 19. It was identical to the others we'd explored, but a strange certainty gripped me. The answers were inside. "Just one more house," I said. "There's something I need to see." Sarah grabbed my arm. "Edison, this isn't about your historical discovery anymore. This place is wrong. Can't you feel it?" I could. God, I could feel it pressing against my mind like a solid weight, but I had to know. 10 minutes, I promised. Then we go. Inside house 19, the same eerie, frozen world greeted us. Dust-covered furniture, blackened windows, an entire home trapped in time. In the study, I found what I was looking for. Another diary, this one leather-bound and falling apart. I flipped straight to the final entry, my hands shaking as I read the faded handwriting. I broke every mirror, but I can still see it. When I close my eyes, I see its reflection. It's not trapped in the glass anymore. It's in me now. God help us all. The date was April 2nd, 1957. Edison, Ben's voice cracked behind me. My reflection in this picture frame, it's smiling at me, and I'm not smiling. The tapping had grown louder, more insistent, coming from every direction at once. Sarah was covering her ears now, which told me she could hear it too, despite pretending she couldn't before. "What is that sound?" she hissed. "It sounds like it's inside my head." My breath caught as a terrible compulsion seized me. Almost against my own will, I squeezed my eyes shut. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I saw it. My own face, but horrifically wrong. The eyes were hollow black pits. The mouth stretched into an impossible grin that split the face nearly in half, and it was moving, independent of my thoughts, watching me from inside my own mind. My eyes flew open with a strangled gasp. Sarah and Ben stared at me, ghostly pale in the harsh beams of their headlamps. "We need to leave," I managed to say, the diary slipping from my numb fingers. "We need to leave right now." "What did you see?" Sarah whispered, all her scientific detachment completely gone. "Nothing," I lied. "I didn't see anything." But the tapping was deafening now, a cacophony of sharp, frantic sounds hitting us from every angle. Worse, I could see the same horrible realization dawning on their faces. They could hear it too, loud and clear. Tap, tap, tap. "It's coming from everything!" Ben yelled, his voice rising in panic as he spun around wildly. "Every piece of glass! Anything shiny!" He grabbed at his camera, desperately trying to wipe the lens clean, as if he could scrub away whatever he was seeing there. The lens slipped from his shaking fingers and shattered loudly against the hardwood floor. The sharp sound of breaking glass echoed through the house, and for one brief, blessed moment, the tapping stopped completely. Then it resumed louder than ever, now coming from the scattered pieces of the broken camera lens as well. "Don't look!" Sarah commanded, her voice cracking but forceful. "Don't look at anything that can show a reflection. We are leaving, now." As we rushed out of the house, I felt it watching, not physically behind me, but a presence focusing, waiting. The tapping chased us down the street, growing more frantic with every step, as if whatever was trapped on the other side was desperate to break free. And deep in the back of my mind, behind my eyelids still squeezed shut against the thought, I could still see that face, my face, grinning at me with those empty pits for eyes, waiting for me to look at it again. The people of Haven hadn't suffered from mass hysteria. They had unearthed something ancient and hungry that lived inside reflections, something that could follow you home, something they'd carried out with them. Something we now carried in our minds. "Edison, come on!" Sarah's shout snapped me back. She and Ben were already halfway to the cavern entrance, their headlamps jerking frantically through the black. I ran after them, but with every pounding step, the heavy certainty settled deeper. Whatever had happened to Haven wasn't confined to that dead town anymore. It had latched onto us, and we were carrying it back into the world. I sprinted after Sarah and Ben, my boots pounding against the unnaturally pristine asphalt of Haven's main street. The tapping sound pursued us, no longer faint but building louder from every reflective surface we passed. It was as if hundreds of invisible fingers were drumming impatiently, demanding entry into our world. "Don't look at anything reflective!" I shouted, my voice cracking. "Don't even glance at your watch face!" We reached the base of our climb, where our gear was waiting. Ben fumbled with his harness, hands shaking badly. A carabiner slipped from his grasp and clattered against the stone floor. "Damn it," he muttered, bending to grab it. That's when I saw it. As Ben leaned forward, the polished metal fastener on his belt caught the beam of my headlamp. In that tiny, shiny surface, I didn't see my own distorted image. Instead, I saw my face wearing that same impossible grin stretching from ear to ear with black holes where my eyes should have been. It winked at me. "Go, go, go!" I screamed, no longer caring if I sounded crazy. Sarah went up first, moving with the desperate speed of pure terror. Ben followed, and I brought up the rear, fighting the powerful urge to look back at the town. Halfway up the vertical shaft, the tapping sound began to fade, replaced by something worse, a soft, wet, slithering noise, like something huge dragging itself across the floor below. At the top of the climb, as I hauled myself over the edge, I made the mistake of looking down one last time. The streetlights of Haven had flickered to life, casting a sickly yellow glow across the suburban nightmare. Standing in front of each house was a figure, perfect copies of us. 3 of me, 3 of Sarah, 3 of Ben, lined up neatly like mannequins. All at once they tilted their heads upward to watch us leave, their faces split by those terrible grins. We sealed the entrance behind us, but I knew it was already too late. 2 weeks later, I sit alone in my apartment. I haven't slept for more than 20 minutes in a row since we got back. I called in sick to work the first week. By the second week, they stopped calling to check on me. Sarah won't answer my calls. Ben sent just one text 3 days ago. "Do you see it too?" I didn't respond. What could I say? That I've smashed every mirror in my place? That I cover my TV screen with a blanket when it's off? That I've blacked out my windows with construction paper like the houses in Haven? The worst part isn't the quick glimpses of reflection that jump out at me during the day, in a spoon, a shop window, the shiny edge of a passing car. It's what happens when I close my eyes. It's waiting there in the dark. My face, but not my face. Sometimes it just watches. Sometimes it tries to speak, silently mouthing words I can't understand. Sometimes it presses against whatever barrier keeps it out, warping like a face pushing against plastic wrap. Tonight, as I sit on my bathroom floor in the dark, I hear it again. That sound. Tap, tap, tap. It's coming from the corner where I swept up the broken pieces of my bathroom mirror, the pile of sharp fragments I was too scared to throw away. Tap, tap, tap. It's getting louder, and I swear the pieces are moving just a little, inching across the tile floor toward me.